Hi, I'm Varun Haran. I'm Senior Editor with Information Security Media Group. I have the pleasure today of speaking with Jonathan Trull, who is the Chief Cybersecurity Advisor for Microsoft's Enterprise Cybersecurity Group. And we're going to be talking about security in the public cloud. What are some of the contemporary challenges, some of the new technologies that cloud security is seeing, how much of it is myth and how much of it is actually having traction on the ground. Hi, Jonathan, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here.
My pleasure, Jonathan. How much of securing the public cloud is a challenge today? Because that was always something that you heard from people, that the public cloud is not where they want to go with cloud computing, but now all of that is changing. So how much of it is a challenge?
Yeah, I think consuming the public cloud is a challenge for customers, not because of the difficulty, but because it's new. I think it's a new set of technologies that they have to consider. Suddenly workloads that they're very used to deploying on premises and the typical technology that they use to secure it changes slightly. So they have to learn some new ways and architectures that work. And I think also there's a shared responsibility. So for public cloud consumption, us as Microsoft, we're responsible for certain types of controls, certain types of physical security controls, logical security controls, but then some still are with the customer. And so I think a lot what we see are misconfigurations that were just due to lack of the proper knowledge about how to deploy and secure those workloads. So I think that tends to be a challenge for customers going to the cloud.
Right. But what I hear you saying is that they're not maybe implementing the right controls or taking the right approach, but it is not as difficult to secure the public cloud today.
Yeah, that would be my, that's how I would view it. So I think it's a lot of the same technologies and controls that we've used as security professionals. So whether it's network layer controls, whether it's application layer controls, they're still there. It's more about having the trained, certified resources to do it properly. But I don't think that the attacks are necessarily unique or more difficult against cloud consumption. It's really more of just having the right methods in place to deal with it.
Absolutely. And we'll come to the attacks in a bit, but you mentioned something about shared responsibility in the public cloud. Right? How much are organizations aware of shared responsibility? Firstly, what is shared responsibility, and
Sure.
how much are they aware of how much responsibility for security they have, and how much the cloud provider has?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I think we continue to educate our users and spend a lot of time, our customers, and what that shared responsibility model looks like. For the most part, I think people understand it. If they're just moving to the cloud, it does take a little bit of time and effort. But some examples that I'll give for infrastructure in Azure, Microsoft is responsible for the physical security. We protect the data centers, we have physical security guards, we have biometric controls in place. The customer doesn't have anything to do with that. That's purely our responsibility. But the customer is always responsible for data. What data goes into the cloud? How do they classify that data? And they're always responsible for user access control. So enabling their users to have certain rights to either read or write to different environments within Azure, that's always within the control of the customer. Now, certain workloads, it becomes pretty unique, right? So platform as a service, Microsoft controls the physical layer, even the operating system, but then they're really responsible for what's on top of that operating system. So Azure SQL would be an example. They're still responsible for giving a database administrator access and only giving them the access that they need. And so we really spend a lot of time walking through that so that they understand what we've implemented, but then what they have to build on top of that.
Okay, so let's come back to some of the common types of attacks in the cloud. So what are some lessons you can share from the types of attacks you saw in 2017-18?
Sure. I think one of the most common is when you have RDP, a remote desktop protocol, open to the internet, and you've only protected it with a username and password. We see that those are exposed and identified very quickly by attackers, and they start brute forcing those with stores of username and passwords. Unfortunately for many customers, if they don't use a strong username and password, it quickly gets compromised and then they move laterally within that environment. We see cases where certain protocols like SMB is exposed to the internet with one encrypt or not catch you, and it was vulnerable to some type of remote attack. And again, the attackers quickly identify those and leverage those. Some we see misconfigurations, right, where there is a storage account and a container that has sensitive data, and for some reason someone has enabled public read-only access. And again, attackers quickly identify those, exploit those, and then typically move laterally within an Azure tenant. So those tend to be the big ones we've seen over the last year.
Okay, so what are some critical controls that organizations need to consider when they look at securing the public cloud?
Yeah, we actually recently just worked with a group called the Center for Internet Security, and we built something that we've called the Azure Security Benchmark. And it's meant to give a roadmap of the key controls that one would want to implement.
Sure.
And some would be making sure that you do not have remote administrative protocols open to the internet. Or if you have to have them, you would enable just-in-time access.
Okay.
So you would say that that port and that service is only made available for a 30-minute duration and only to a known IP address. So it's really limiting the exposure. Some are about putting the right network security groups in place to segment different workloads based on their importance. And then a big piece of it is monitoring, right? Just because you move workload in the cloud, you still have to monitor if there's potential anomalies or attacks that are lost. And so we talk about enabling the right security and logging so that you get visibility into what's going on in those environments. So those are some of the big key controls that we recommend, but this document that's freely available online has over 100 controls that we recommend that people can go implement immediately on day one.
Well, thanks Jonathan for that timely insight. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you.
So that was Jonathan Trull, who is the Chief Cybersecurity Advisor for Microsoft's Enterprise Cybersecurity Group. For ISMG, this is Varun Haran. Thanks for watching.